The knock came exactly at 11 p.m. Not loud, not desperate, just 3 slow taps that somehow carried more fear than panic. I had never heard anyone knock on a bedroom door like that before. It was the kind of knock that made the whole apartment feel strangely silent, as if the walls themselves were waiting to hear what would happen next. When I opened the door, my roommate stood there with red eyes, her hands trembling slightly as she hugged her oversized sweater around herself. She looked like someone trying very hard not to fall apart. Before I could even ask what was wrong, she looked up at me and quietly said that she didn't want to be alone tonight. In that single moment, I realized that sometimes the strongest people are the ones carrying the heaviest pain without letting anyone notice. Before we continue this emotional journey, take a second to support Storyverse. If you believe kindness can change someone's life and everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Share this story with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to Storyverse for more heartfelt stories that stay with you long after they end. My name is Rowan Mercer, and until that night, I believe my biggest problem was figuring out what to do with my life. After graduating from college, I had recently started working as a junior architect at a small design company in the city. The job paid enough to cover rent, but not enough to stop worrying about bills every month. Life had settled into a predictable routine of early mornings, crowded buses, endless blueprints, and quiet evenings inside the apartment I shared with my roommate, Celine Arlo. Celine and I couldn't been more different. I enjoyed routines, early breakfasts, and long walks through the park before work. She loved spontaneous adventures, sunrise photography, and collecting old books from weekend markets. She filled the apartment with little plants, handwritten quotes taped to the refrigerator, and soft music that somehow made even rainy afternoons feel peaceful. We respected each other's space, laughed over late dinners, argued only about whose turn it was to wash dishes, and slowly became something more than roommates. We became the closest thing either of us had to family in the city. Yet, despite living together for almost a year, there was one thing Celine never talked about: her family. Whenever someone at work mentioned parents or holidays, she would politely change the subject. If I accidentally asked about where she grew up, she would smile just enough to end the conversation without answering. I assumed she simply valued her privacy, and I respected that. Everything changed the following morning. The sunlight streamed through our apartment windows, painting golden lines across the kitchen floor. It should have felt like every other Saturday, but the apartment carried a strange stillness. Celine looked exhausted. She slept. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes, and although she tried smiling while making coffee, it looked forced. After a long silence, she finally admitted that she had received a phone call the previous afternoon. Her younger brother had reached out after years without speaking. Their mother had suffered a serious stroke. The family she had spent 6 years avoiding suddenly needed her. She confessed something I never expected. 6 years earlier, her father had blamed her for the collapse of the family business. A trusted employee had stolen thousands of dollars. But because Celine had recommended hiring him, her father believed she was responsible. Harsh words were spoken. Pride grew, then love. One painful argument turned into years of silence. She left home carrying nothing but 2 suitcases and a broken heart. As she explained everything, I realized why she had knocked on my door the night before. She wasn't afraid of being alone in the apartment. She was afraid of returning to the memories she had spent years trying to escape. That afternoon, instead of spending the weekend catching up on work like I had planned, I offered to drive her back to her hometown. She refused 3 times. I insisted 4. Finally, she accepted. The drive lasted almost 4 hours. Fields stretched endlessly beside the highway while old songs played quietly through the speakers. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we remained silent. Those silent moments said more than words ever could. When we arrived, I noticed how tightly Celine gripped the car door before stepping outside. The neighborhood looked peaceful, filled with flowering trees and children riding bicycles. Nothing about it suggested years of pain, but emotional scars are invisible. Inside the hospital room, her mother lay sleeping peacefully beneath white blankets. Tubes and monitors surrounded the bed, their steady beeping reminding us how fragile life truly was. Celine froze. For several seconds, she couldn't move. Then, slowly, she walked forward and gently held her mother's hand. The older woman's eyes opened. Recognition appeared almost instantly. Neither spoke. They simply cried. Watching that reunion from the corner of the room reminded me that sometimes forgiveness begins without words. Sometimes love survives years of silence, waiting patiently for someone brave enough to return. The difficult reunion came later. Her father entered the room carrying flowers. The moment he saw Celine, he stopped walking. His face showed shock, regret, pride, sadness, and hope all at once. For a long time, nobody spoke. Finally, the proud man who had once driven his daughter away quietly admitted that he had spent years believing anger was easier than admitting he had been wrong. After discovering the employee had confessed everything before disappearing overseas, he realized the truth. But by then, Shane kept him from reaching out. He expected Celine to walk away. Instead, she hugged him. Not because the past had disappeared, but because carrying resentment had become heavier than forgiveness. The weeks that followed changed more lives than I ever imagined. Celine decided to stay temporarily to help her mother recover after rehabilitation began. I drove back to the city alone, expecting life to return to normal. Instead, the apartment felt painfully empty. Her plants slowly leaned toward the windows, as if searching for her. The refrigerator still displayed her handwritten notes reminding me to drink enough water and never skip breakfast. Every corner reminded me how much light one person can quietly bring into another's life. We stayed every day. Morning messages became afternoon phone calls. Afternoon calls became evening video chats. She shared small victories. Her mother smiled today. Her father laughed for the first time in years. Her younger brother finally invited everyone to dinner. The broken family slowly began rebuilding itself one ordinary day at a time. Months passed. One bright spring afternoon, she finally returned. She looked different, not because of new clothes or hairstyle. She looked lighter, as though years of invisible weight had finally been lifted from her shoulders. Life resumed its familiar rhythm. But something between us had quietly changed. We understood each other more deeply. One evening, while organizing old photographs for a charity event, we discovered hundreds of abandoned family albums donated by people clearing old storage units. Looking through those forgotten memories inspired an unexpected idea. What if we helped lonely seniors preserve their life stories? Many elderly residents in nearby nursing homes had nobody left to remember them. Together, we started spending weekends interviewing them, scanning photographs, recording memories, and creating beautiful memory books for each family. Word spread, volunteers joined, local businesses donated supplies, students offered free photography sessions. Soon, what began as two roommates spending weekends together became an entire community project. One elderly gentleman cried after receiving the first printed book containing photographs from every decade of his life. He whispered that he had been afraid the world would forget he ever existed. That single sentence stayed with me forever. Everyone deserves to be remembered. Everyone deserves someone willing to listen. One sunny afternoon, nearly a year after that unforgettable knock, our project received recognition from the city council. During the small ceremony, Celine was invited to speak. Instead of talking about awards or success, she shared something deeply personal. She said, "Healing never begins the moment someone apologizes. Healing begins the moment someone chooses not to let yesterday steal tomorrow." Looking at the audience, I realized nearly everyone was wiping away tears, including me. Later that evening, we returned home carrying certificates we barely cared about. The apartment looked exactly the same as it had a year earlier. Same couch, same tiny kitchen, same plants, same hallway. Only changed. Sometimes people think miracles arrive with fireworks and dramatic music. But the greatest miracle I have ever witnessed started with 3 quiet knocks on a bedroom door and someone finding the courage to admit they didn't want to face the darkness alone. That simple act of honesty saved not only one lonely night, but an entire family, dozens of strangers, and even changed my own understanding of what kindness really means. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a heartfelt comment below, and subscribe to Storyverse. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that remind the world compassion still exists.